Come and discover Portugal with us. Please like, subscribe, and leave your comment. Your support and opinions are very important to us. Thank you. The Montemoro Novo castle stands in a dominant position on the highest hill in the region, approximately 945 feet above sea level. There was a castrum at this location, which was later Romanized and designated as Castrum Mallianum, according to inscriptions found on a funerary cippus and on a tombstone. According to some researchers, the town may have been fortified during the Muslim era when the intramural urban space was structured, namely the Casbah area. The village of Montemoro Novo was conquered in 1166 during the reign of King Afonso I of Portugal. Originally, the town was located within its walls and expanded beyond them over the centuries. After returning to Muslim rule, Montemoro Novo was definitively recovered in 1201, having been granted a charter in 1203. The construction of the medieval castle dates back to this period. The village gate is the most famous entrance to the walled enclosure. Nearby, attached to the wall, is the guardhouse, built in the 16th century to enforce the security of this axis. This entrance stands out for its clock tower, built during the reign of King Denis between the 13th and 14th centuries. It has a manual-line bell tower which housed 3 bronze bells. In 2003, the municipality carried out excavations in an area located a few meters southwest of this tower, next to the street that gave access to the town's central square and the mayor's palace. More than 10,000 square feet were uncovered, corresponding to part of the urban area of the old town of Montemoro Novo, built essentially in the 17th century, including streets, housing units, and a wine cellar. Remains of everyday ceramics imported from European countries and the Far East were also recovered, indicating that people with some economic capacity lived here. This area was possibly part of the Jewish quarter, and the remains of a large building were found, which could be the synagogue, next to which a cistern existed. The dwellings found here mostly had 2 floors, being divided into several small compartments. The upper floor would be residential, and the lower floor would be used for commerce. At the northwest end of the castle is the Angel Gate, or Bishop's Gate, built during the reign of King Denis between the 13th and 14th century. Its name was possibly related to a small chapel dedicated to Our Lady that existed here. This entrance is flanked by 2 towers, one of which is still preserved in almost its entirety, featuring a hipped pyramidal roof. In this area of the fortified enclosure we can also find the ruins of the Church of St. Mary of the Bishop, originally built in the 13th century and which, in the 14th century, appears in a survey ordered by King Denis of Portugal. In 1534, during the reign of King John III, the church underwent a thorough reconstruction in the manual-line style, from which elements such as the magnificent portal and some corbels that supported the vaults survive. Over the main portal there was a large window, also of manual-line style, whose sill remains can still be seen. At that time this was the most important temple in Montemoro Novo, featuring 3 naves and a roof supported by 14 columns. From that interior some remains of the apse chapels have survived. On the Gospel side there was the Chapel of St. George, and on the Epistle side there was the Chapel of St. Blaise, where an image and relic of this saint were displayed. The chancel contained an image of Our Lady of the Expectation, also called Saint Mary of the Bishop. The church also had a chapel dedicated to Saint Bartholomew, commissioned by Gomes and Carvalho. On the wall on the Gospel side there was an altar with a painting of Saint Catherine. Above the main portal would be the choir loft, which, according to the records, was divided into 3 sections. Between the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century, a sacristy was built on the south side of the church, the ruins of which are still visible, replacing elements from the 1534 work. It was in this church that John of God, who was born in Montemoro Novo and was the founder of the Order of the Hospitaller Brothers, was baptized, being canonized in 1690. The abandonment of the intramural village led to the rapid decline of the Church of St. Mary of the Bishop, with the building being completely vandalized and the land sold for agricultural purposes. In the southern sector of the fortified enclosure was the mayor's palace, today deeply ruined. Its original construction dates back to the 14th century, being the seat of the town's administration. The possibility has been raised that the citadel of the Almohad fortification was located here, which would have been built to protect Alcácer do Sal against attacks made from Évora. It was in the 15th century that this enclosure took on a palatial dimension, given the progressive loss of the castle's defensive functions under the leadership of João of Bragança, who in 1471 became lord of the town. This nobleman, son of Fernando I, Duke of Bragança, was made Lord of Montemor by King Afonso V, later receiving in 1478 the title of Marquis of Montemor. With the transfer of the role of mayor to the Mascarenhas family from 1483 onwards, the adaptation of this space to a residential reality progressed. Existing documentation indicates that stonemaster Afonso Mendes de Oliveira, who worked on several castles, directed these works here at the end of the 15th century. In 1495, King Manuel I was hosted here during the courts of Montemoro Novo. It was also in this palace that the decision was made to undertake the discovery of the sea route to India, later led by Vasco da Gama. In 1759, this mayorship was extinguished and the palace fell into ruin, and in the middle of the 19th century, demolitions were carried out here due to the fear of collapse. Next to the palace is the Church of St. John the Baptist, which was founded during the 13th century. It has a rectangular floor plan and a single nave covered by a barrel vault built in brick. The chancel is covered by a hemispherical dome that ends in a roof lantern with 4 windows. It still has traces of decorative wall paintings from the 17th century. On the facade facing southeast, it's still possible to see a door with a pointed arch, to which another smaller arch was later added. Originally, this was the church's main portal. At its south-facing entrance, we can see a Visigothic impost that was reused in its construction. The piece is decorated with undulating elements, describing spirals or volutes. Within the castle area there are two more religious spaces: the Convent of Our Lady of Salutation, currently closed and awaiting renovation work, and the Church of St. James, which we'll address later. At the eastern end of the castle stands the Tower of the Ill-Fated Hour, a 62 feet high Gothic building that protects the gate of the same name, which is also known as the Gate of St. James or of the Sun. The name of the tower and gate is associated with a legend that indicates that King Sancho I's soldiers, during the conquest of Montmorillon, were hiding in the fields in preparation for their attack. During the night, the Muslim sentries left the door ajar, which allowed the Portuguese forces to quickly take the castle. The Moors would therefore have given the name Ill-Fated Hour to this door and tower. Near the Tower of the Ill-Fated Hour is the Church of St. James, which was one of the 4 parish churches located within the walled area of the medieval town. The first reference to this temple dates back to 1302, and in the mid-16th century it was extensively renovated and remodeled in the Manueline style. It was open for worship until the 19th century, when it was abandoned and suffered damage that affected the paintings inside. After a restoration campaign, it reopened to the public in 2007 as the Montmorillon Castle Interpretive Center, a function it maintains to this day. The main highlight of this temple lies in a remarkable set of wall paintings created during the 17th century in the case of representations of religious scenes, and 18th century in terms of phytomorphic and grotesque elements. On the epistle side we find the Chapel of Our Lord of the Wounds, which features a set of mural paintings representing scenes from the life and passion of Christ. On the left wall the descent from the cross is depicted. Several symbols of the martyrdom of Christ are painted on the dome's outer circle. In the innermost circle, 8 cherubs appear. In the center, the Calvary. And on the right, the Ecce Homo. The interior of the church consists of 2 floors. The nave is covered by a ground vault supported by granite or ceramic brick corbels. The chancel is separated from the body of the nave by a triumphal arch decorated with pictorial floral motifs, similar to what happens in the 3-centered arch that supports the choir loft. On the wall on the right side of the chancel, paintings are superimposed in 2 levels. At the bottom are depicted 2 clerical figures, and at the top a scene alluding to the life of Saint Catherine of Siena. In the upper part of the chancel's left wall there's a representation of the martyrdom of Saint Barbara. On the chancel ceiling we can see the area of mural painting that suffered the least damage and which represents an impressive celestial orchestra of musician angels. Montmarnov Castle has been classified as a national monument since 1951 and has been the subject of some improvement work over the last few decades, intending to facilitate its visit and the interpretation of its various spaces. Thank you for discovering Portugal with us. If you liked the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to follow our new releases.